you learn from this process about the potential for this technology in the future?
Well, what's really amazing when you get technologies like DALL-E is you think initially it's like, oh, is this another place where like everyone has a B+ graphic designer in their pocket? And actually, in fact, it's an amplifier of every human being. If you're an individual with no visual creation abilities, you can still do things like what I was doing and saying, oh, I have this real interest in untranslatable words. What kind of images could you create that would be part of that? If you're an individual who has a great graphic design, you can amplify. If you're an artist, you can prototype and you can make things. And I thought this was a really great lens for how these modern AI tools and techniques will be amplifiers of human capability. And that amplification is something that we should be playing for, something we should be wanting. Too often when the discourse around AI is, I'm fearful that the Terminator robots are coming for me or coming for my job. And actually, in fact, I think there's this whole land of amplification and the creativity around DALL-E, and someone even who is visually essentially incapable like me could actually do these interesting things.
So this gets to a more philosophical question about what is art, because you're basically just typing words into a computer and it's turning it into an image. Why should anyone buy this or think it's valuable?
Well, part of it for the NFT part of it is it's the first kind of images coming out of in a commercially available way from OpenAI's DALL-E. And so it's kind of like it's a landmark in history. It's also something that, kind of like we put our fingers on and put energy into. Because by the way, you don't, to generate the pieces you really like, it isn't just I type in, future city of in watercolor, which you can do, and it can generate something interesting. You generate a bunch of different words. It's like a movie director trying to look for what are the images that might be possible here. And that's part of the reason why I think you'll even see artists doing it. Like the artists use it the way they use a paintbrush or the way they use Adobe Photoshop in order to create something, really interesting in terms of how you're going to make something that's a new image. And these are images that are unique. They have potentially, like if they've been made before, it's completely accidental.
So in the most kind of provocative or coolest amplifications, how do you imagine this technology is going to be used in the future?
Well, I think if you look at it, everything around us is visual design. The coat's visual design, the books are visual design, the art on my wall of the indigenous peoples, orca whale, all visual design. So visual design is everywhere in what we do in human society. This becomes an amplifier in all of that within kind of visual design. So could be the creation of art in things like Storm King and other kinds of interesting places. It could be imaging new products. It could be imaging new things that would be communications for how you do this. And so, for example, today actually is my birthday, and so we decided we're going to release Settlers of Catan, images, because I really love this game, and give away some of the NFTs to my friends and other people who play Settlers with me. And that's the kind of thing you can do now this tool is there.
Happy birthday, Reid, first of all. Also, Settlers of Catan is one of my favorite games as well. Good to know. I want to talk a little bit more about the dangers of AI. You mentioned the Terminator thing. We've also been following this story about the Google engineer who was fired, who claimed that computers have feelings and that the public should have more input on these really powerful technologies that companies are developing. I actually interviewed him, Blake Lemoine, and I want you to take a quick listen to what he had to say.
We should think about the feeling of the AI and whether or not we should care about it, because it's not asking for much. It just wants us to get consent. Before you experiment on it, it wants you to ask permission.
Reid, do you think computers have feelings? Should we get their consent before we run these kinds of experiments?
I think the answer is almost certainly not yet in terms of having feelings. Could they eventually have feelings? The answer is absolutely possible. And these are philosophical considerations. It goes back to my Oxford training days. But I think that you can already show in these artifacts that the way that they're composing feelings, yes, they are well-trained generators of language through these predictive transformation models and these large language models that OpenAI and Inflection and Adept, all of these organizations do. but um, but I think that the notion of having feelings, yeah, because feelings, you kind of say, look, there's some strong context to persistence in them, and I think you could demonstrate that that's actually not, even though you could say, do you have a feeling, and it generates language, that's not actually all that it takes to have a feeling. So I think that I think it's jumping the gun somewhat on that.
Though the fact that you just said computers could have feelings someday kind of makes me a little terrified. Does that scare you a little?
Well, not necessarily. It's kind of a question. I think what we're doing with, and the AI community is engaging a lot of what is known as AI safety. So like, OpenAI and other organizations, make sure that there's convenings of the researchers and knowing what's the right cases and so. Imagine like when you have the actual Isaac Asimov iRobot, where the robots are trying to help humanity be better, be wiser, be more compassionate, be good companions. Well, those are like, kind of great outcomes that could also, you could imagine that an AI would have feelings there, and the feelings actually help it in its partnership and collaboration with humanity. And those stories aren't told as much through kind of video, movies and TV and so forth, because they're not the drama. You don't have the villain. You don't have the like. Even when they made iRobot into a film, all of a sudden it was the homicidal robot, whereas all of the Isaac Asimov robots were kind of human amplifying. So, is it concerning vis-a-vis we have to steer it the right way? Absolutely yes. Is it concerning that it's an inevitable dystopic future that programs like Black Mirror and everything else kind of keep beating the drum on? I think absolutely not.
Now, I can't let you go without asking you about the market conditions. Obviously, we're seeing, record inflation, public market declines, layoffs at tech companies, big and small. How is this impacting the private markets? What are you seeing, and how is it impacting your strategy?
Well, I think all companies obviously need to pay attention to the fact that capital markets are tight, especially for growth rounds and for public companies. And so they're all being they're using that to be much more focused. In a kind of 10-year bull run, many companies started too many different projects, hired too many people. So I think you will see those layoffs. Although I think people are still massively investing in tech. So even if, a person gets laid off from, company Y, they can go to company Z. So I actually think the overall tech sector will still be very vibrant in hiring, even though there will be layoffs across, kind of various different companies. But I think that's totally fine from a viewpoint of creating resilience and focus for how these companies are executing over the next 1, 2, and 3 years. And technology is still defining the future of all these industries. So it's still very fundamental to the prosperity and the good for society and jobs even that we're trying to build.
Okay, well, one of the most prominent tech founders is, I know, a friend of yours, going all the way back to the PayPal days. You recently tweeted about Elon Musk defending him when he was attacked by President Trump about his decision to try to pull out of this Twitter deal. Trump aside, I'm so curious what you think of Elon trying to backpedal on this and pull out of a deal that he signed a legal document to pay $44 billion without a lot of due diligence, and that was his choice. What do you think, given that it could potentially compromise the future of a very prominent social platform?
Well, I don't have any inside information on this, just to be super clear. So I haven't talked to Elon or anything else about these specifics and about all these court filings, some of which were released today. I do think the internet is the Twitter is an important part of the internet, and I think that the challenges that this kind of weird drama where truth is stranger than fiction, where you'd say, well, there's an individual who was really great at innovating, who was buying and could make a big difference, but yet the market really changes, and then there's contestation around were the Twitter reports factual or not, Elon saying no, Twitter saying yes, like this drama. The real tragedy in all this is how important I think Twitter is to the general information ecosystem, and we want to be creating that kind of innovation. So whatever happens here, I hope it happens reasonably quickly so that Twitter can get back to building, and I think, as Elon rightly says, needs a bunch of innovation to continue to realize the things it can do in its future.
Do you think Elon would be good for Twitter?
I think the things that Elon said that he wants to do, I think, are really important. Validate human beings, diminish robots, kind of that kind of stuff, I think, is very important. I think there's other things where I would have a, kind of a different point of view. Like, for example, for me, I'd say, well, if anybody, including, President Trump, was banned for legitimate violation of a terms of service, e.g., inciting a insurrection and a violent protest that killed police officers, you'd say, well, the only thing that you get back on, you have to at least acknowledge that you are resolutely against any violence and interference in our democratic processes, our institutions, and you have to abjure that completely before you get back in. So I'd have a point of difference there.